Good day, students. My name is Mrs. Ruweda Musa, and I'm going to be doing this podcast or walkover with you on your medical aid credits. That is your section 6A, which is your medical tax credit, MTC, and your 6B, which is your additional medical tax credit. Okay, so I'm sure by now some of you have already done it, are familiar with the concept. Busy with assignment 2, and this is definitely, being tested in assignment 2. So just a few minutes to explain to you a concept which some students are finding a little challenging, I would say. Also, a class example which you can do on your own. Let's begin. So the framework's in front of us. All of us are very familiar with this framework already. How does it fit in? Where does the MTC and AMTC come in? In the full framework, this is the top part of the framework. This is only up until taxable income. Remember that the portion that your employer contributes towards your medical aid fund is a taxable fringe benefit. So it will be in this, it will be in your income, in your taxable income framework calculation. But then when we're doing the medical tax credits, remember that this actually comes after you calculate your normal tax. So when you calculate your normal tax based on that taxable income, that's where it comes in. Remember that you've got to deduct your age rebate depending on your age. Don't forget that, please, for 2020, the rebates. And then comes in your medical tax credits where you deduct section 6A and 6B. So that's a bit of background. Let's quickly go straight into an example and see how this is going to pan out. Okay, so Mr. X is 55 years old. This is a quick class example, very basic, very simple, just to get you used to the concept. I will go through it very, very slowly. But then, of course, you have the link in front of you so that you can keep referring back to it. There are many, many examples on this in the textbook and in study unit 4. So please make reference to that. Okay, Mr. X, 55 years old. Age is very important in this calculation. He's married out of community of property to Mrs. Y. So married, 2 children over the age of 18. Wife and 2 children are dependent. That means they are registered medical fund. They're dependent on this registered medical aid fund. Okay, no disabilities, very important. Mr. X's taxable income, 200,000. Employer, there we go. Employer contributed 14,000. So at the beginning of the slides, I told you that in your taxable income framework, don't forget the medical aid fringe benefit that will come in. So this is what I was referring to. Okay. Mr. X paid the following expenses, contributions. So in addition to the 14,000, he paid contributions of 42,000 Rand and qualifying medical expenses not reimbursed. Okay, important information. So required is Part A and Part B, 2 separate sections. Part A says, what are his medical tax credits, Mr. X's, which means what is the 6A and 6B. Okay, Part B says, again, what is the 6A and 6B, assuming he is now 66 years old. Okay, let's go on to Part A. Medical tax credits for 2020. Remember Mr. X, 310, he is the main member, and his first dependent happens to be his spouse. Remember that the second 310 is not only for a spouse. A lot of students are confusing this, and we're getting a lot of queries on this. The 310 is for any dependent, the first dependent on the medical aid. So it can be a child, doesn't matter. So in this instance, Mr. X is married to Mrs. Y, so it is his wife. So 310 per person per month times 12 months. So there's it 7440. That's for Mr. X, Mrs. Y, and then the 2 children that we spoke about that belong to a registered medical aid fund. 209 for the 2020 year of assessment times 12 months. So combine the MTC for Mr. X would be 12,456. That is your section 6A. Okay, section 6B. Okay, so this is now the more, I wouldn't say complicated, but the more, the challenging part of the medical tax credit. This is the additional medical tax credit. Okay, so there's steps that it's advisable to write down these steps, and we go through the steps and then you slot in the amounts. It makes a lot more sense for students to do it this way. Okay, So what are your total contributions? We know 14,000 employer, 42,000 Mr. X, 56,000 happiness. Okay, so that's total contributions. So if you want to write it down, it's in front of you. You don't have to write it down. Total contributions 56,000 less the limit. Okay, so the limit applied here, because he's less than 65 years old, the limit applied here is 4 times your MTC. Okay, why 4? Because the legislation tells you 4. Why do they tell you 4? Because he's under 65 years old. Okay, that's a rule. Study it. 12,456 is your MTC, which we calculated, which was on the previous slide. So 4 times 12,456 is 49,824. So you take your total contribution less your limit. 49,824 gets you to 6,176. To the 6,176, you add your QME, which is your qualifying medical expenses not reimbursed, 15,000 given to you in the information. 21,176. Now at this point, it is important to identify or to note that Mr. X is 55 years old. So because he's 55 years old, there are 2 additional steps that happen in this calculation. The first is you have to ask yourself, what is in excess of 7.5% of your taxable income, or what exceeds 7.5% of your taxable income? So if you take 7.5%, 200,000 taxable income, we gave you the taxable income of 200,000, it's 15,000, right? So what exceeds the 15,000? So you look at the 21,176, which was your total contribution less your limit, add your QME. Remember that formula? 21,176. By how much does it exceed 7.5% of taxable income? So 21,176 exceeds 15,000 by 6,176. Okay, the calculation's in front of you. 25% of this is your AMTC. Very, very important. The 2 steps. 7.5 as exceeds 7.5 of taxable income, and 25% of that. Okay, which is 1,544. So your AMTC, which is your 6B, is 1,544. So good question to ask yourself at this point, what was your MTC? Anyone? Okay, good. 12,456 as we calculated. So for this part A, we said calculate the medical tax credits, which means the total medical tax credits, which is made up of your 6A, which is your MTC, which is 12,456, and your 6B, which is your AMTC, which is 1,544 in this instance. Very important, his age. Okay. We can now go to part B. Part B, the only difference now is we made Mr. X 66 years old. So now he is over 65 years old, okay? Still married to the same wife, Mrs. Y, and 2 children. Okay, so age is an important factor as it will guide you when you're calculating for someone who's older 65 years old. Okay, at this point, we start. The MTC remains the same, remember that, because Mr. X is still married to Mrs. Y and they have 2 children. So your MTC stays the same in this scenario. The age is different. The age affects now the AMTC in this part. Let's go. Again, step 1, total contributions like I told you, less limit. Okay, great. I see there's a difference in the limit here. Did anyone pick up? Because Mr. X is over 65, he is actually 3 times. It's 3 times 12,456. And not 4 like the previous one where he was under 65. Okay, so that limit is 56 minus 37,368, which gives you 18,632. Okay, very, very important to note now the difference between the 3 times 12,456 and the 4 times 12,456. Where did I get this 3? It's legislation. Why did I use 3? Because he's over 65. Okay, so the difference between 56,037,368 gives me 18,632 plus your qualifying medical expenses not reimbursed. We gave you 15,000. It's 33,632. Different again from when an individual is less than 65 is that had a 2-step approach. Remember, as exceeds 7.5% and then 25% thereof. Okay, now we don't have that. Here it's straight, flat rate. 33.3% of 33,632 is your AMTC, which is 11,199. Why is it different? It's different because he is over 65 years. Okay, very, very simple example, which you can please redo on your own. And that's it, ladies and gents. I hope that this little few minutes of this podcast helped you in understanding the basic concepts of the medical tax credits, which is in effect the MTC 6A and the AMTC 6B. Thank you very much.